short class. In the last class, we had discussed about the three modes of material nature. So today we will try and discuss as to how do we transcend the three modes of material nature, and what is the means for transcending the three modes of material nature. So before I start, I would like to offer my prayers. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. श्री चैतन्य मनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कथामयं ददान्ति स्वपदान्तिकं वन्देऽहं श्री गुरु श्रीयुत पदकमलं श्री गुरुं वैष्णवांश्च श्री रूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं स्वजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजन सहितं श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य देवं श्री राधा कृष्ण पादान् सहगण ललित श्री विशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधु दीन बंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छा कल्पतरुभ्यस्य कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण प्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते जय पताक स्वामी निति नामिने। नमो आचार्य पदाय निताय कृपा प्रदाय गौर कथा धामताय नागर ग्रामतारिणे। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण प्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी निति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशधारिणे। Hare Krishna. So before we begin, we'll have a quick recap as to what we discussed so that we can connect more with today's class. So we discussed about the three modes of material nature, and Krishna tells that these three modes of material nature is coming from him. But he is aloof from these three modes of material nature. And Krishna is not affected by these three modes of material nature, and Krishna is above these three modes of material nature. So the three modes of material nature are known as guna, and in Sanskrit guna means rope. So we discussed as to how in the Srimad Bhagavad Gita we can see
Mataji,
that
you are in mute, Mataji.
Hare Krishna. Am I audible?
Yes, Mataji, you can audible.
Yes, Mataji.
Thank you. So, as to how it is known as guna, and these three modes of material nature are controlled by Maya Devi, and we are always under these three modes of material nature, and each mode of material nature they have their own characteristics. We discussed what are the characteristics of the three modes of material nature, that is the mode of goodness, mode of passion, and mode of ignorance, and how we are always in control of these three modes rather than we having control over them. So today we will try and discuss as to how do we transcend these three modes of material nature, and what is the means for transcending these three modes of material nature, and how can we stabilize our bhakti life, and how can we attain the platform of Shuddha Sattva. So in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, verse 14, the Lord tells that Daivi Esha Gunamayi Mama Maya Duratyaya Mam Evai Prapatyante Maya Ekam Tarantite. The translation goes as, this divine energy of mind consisting of the three modes of material nature is difficult to overcome, but those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. So here the Lord is giving us the means as to how we can transcend these three modes of material nature, and how can we go beyond these three modes of material nature. So the Lord is telling that these three modes of material nature is created by him, and he himself is telling that it is very difficult to overcome. So when Lord is telling, so we can understand that he only speaks is the supreme Lord, and he only speaks the absolute truth. So when Lord himself is telling that it is difficult to overcome, so we can understand how powerful these three modes of material nature are. But he is also telling the means by which we can overcome. He's telling that those who surrender unto the Supreme Lord, those who surrender unto the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, they can overcome these three modes of material nature very easily. So we have to understand that first we have to understand that these three modes of material nature are under the control of the Supreme Lord. So His Grace Radhesham Prabhu, sorry, he was giving a very beautiful example as to how the iron fillings and the magnet. So when the iron fillings are there, and when the magnet is kept underneath the iron fillings, we can see that they start moving. But when the person who is looking from the upfront, he feels that the iron fillings are moving on its own, and like a ghostly form, something like that. But the person who is controlling these iron filling knows that it is the magnet that is making these iron fillings on the tabletop to move. So it is not the iron fillings that is moving on its own. So he also gives another example as to how a person is standing inside the house, and he's putting his hand outside the window of the house, and he's performing various actions. So if suppose an object is thrown towards the hand, the hand catches the object. So it is performing various wonderful and beautiful activities. The person who is on the other end, that is outside the house, is thinking that this hand is so beautiful and it's performing such wonderful activities, but it's on the other side, it is the man inside the house who is controlling the hand. So if the person who is outside the hand, he thinks this hand is so wonderful, and he cuts the hand and he takes it away with him, then the hand stops working because it's connected with the body. So we have to understand as to what is the source. So regarding with this example, we have to understand what is the source of the hand, and what is the purpose of the hand. So the source the hand is coming out from is from the body, and the purpose of the hand is to serve the body. So similarly, with this analogy, we can understand that the source of these three modes of material nature is the Supreme Lord, and these three modes of material nature can be overcome only when we understand that these three modes are under the control of the Supreme Lord, and only the Supreme Personality of Godhead can help us overcome these three modes of material nature and help us cross this material ocean. So in the purport of this 7.14, Prabhupada gives a very beautiful analogy as to how it is only the Supreme Lord who is the controller of these three modes. So he gives an example of a prisoner. So when he tells that a prisoner cannot get another prisoner who is in the jail out of the prison. It's impossible, because he is also a prison and he is bound behind the cell. So it is impossible for him to come out of the prison and liberate another prisoner or get him out free. But a police or the person who is a lawyer, he can file a petition and he can get that prisoner out of the court. So that is possible, that a lawyer getting a criminal out of the jail is possible, but a prisoner who is inside the jail getting another prisoner out is impossible. So similarly, we cannot transcend these three modes of material nature by our own means and our own strength. So we have to approach somebody who is at a higher authority and who is not under the control of these three modes. So in the example of a prisoner, the lawyer, he's beyond he is not bound in the prison, and he has all the power and strength. He can, go to the court and file a petition and get the criminal out. So similarly, the Supreme Lord, he's beyond these three modes of material nature, and he being the supreme controller, he can, liberate us from the three modes of material nature. So Prabhupada, going deep into the purport, Prabhupada writes that there are only two means to get oneself out of this, entanglement of the three modes of material nature. And Prabhupada very beautifully writes that it is one by surrendering unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that we read in the translation, and the second, it is possible only by his representatives, that is none other than our spiritual masters. So we will try and understand this concept more with analogies, because Prabhupada always liked quoting analogies and understanding the philosophical part of it. So first we'll try and see as to how do we surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So when Prabhupada was once asked, so Prabhupada, how long does it take to surrender to the Supreme Lord? Prabhupada, he replies, a minute. It just takes 1 minute to surrender. You can surrender immediately. So if you know that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and if you think that he is the cause of all causes, it just takes 1 minute for the living entity to surrender. So how do we surrender unto the Supreme Lord? The only means in this age of Kali, as we know, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came down, Krishna came down as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He gave us the Harinama Sankirtan, and he has given us the 9 different processes, the Navavidha Bhakti, 9 different processes of devotional service. So the only means by which we can surrender unto the Supreme Lord is by performing devotional service to the Lord. So when we tell devotional service, the perfect word for it in Sanskrit is bhakti. So bhakti means performing loving devotional service, which is unconditional. So it is not that, we go to the Supreme Lord and we tell that, today I'll offer tulsi, in return you give me 100 crore rupees. So that is not devotional service. That Prahlad Maharaj tells that it is business. So we don't have to have a business with the Supreme Lord, but we have to perform a loving, unconditional loving service to the Supreme Lord, wherein we serve the Lord without any expectation in return for this service. So when we tell devotional service, there are various exalted devotees we've seen in, it could be in Srimad Bhagavatam, who have performed devotional service and attained perfection in their life. So Krishna tells that Aham Bhakta Paradino. So I am under the control of my devotees. So why is that he is under the control of his devotees? It is because the devotees bind the Supreme Lord with their devotional service. So he tells that we know that the Supreme Lord is beyond the 3 modes of material nature, but he is not bound by it. But the devotional service that the devotee performs, he gets bound by that devotional service. So I was hearing in a lecture, and that senior devotee was telling, Krishna can give anything to any living entity, and whatever one desires, even if he desires mukti, Krishna is ready to give it. But what Krishna thinks twice to give his devotional service. So the Krishna doesn't grant his devotional service to anybody easily. So we will try and look in how devotional service has helped, has helped the devotees transcend the 3 modes of material nature and, attain that loving service to the Supreme Lord. So, firstly, we can see in Srimad Bhagavatam, there are various examples, but we'll try and see the Gajendra Moksha. We had also discussed it previously, but we'll try and we will try and see as to how did Gajendra offer devotional service. So we know Gajendra was in the midst of that suffering, wherein the crocodile had caught his leg and in that pain, excruciating pain, in spite, even in being at that situation, Gajendra performed devotional service. So, how did he perform devotional service? He plucked a lotus flower and he offered it to the Supreme Lord. So, when he plucked the lotus flower and he offered it to the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord, and he called him out, the Supreme Lord came and rescued Gajendra. So first of all, it is when it comes to devotional service, it is not what we perform, it is also how we perform it. So Gajendra performed devotional service. He did a very menial service of plucking the lotus flower from the water pond and offering it at the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. But the mood in which Gajendra performed the devotional service is very important. So that it is said that it is not the activity that we perform, but the mood that we perform in. So we can give charity to people. But what is being given in charity? So government, there was a certain period of time wherein government started giving alcohol, liquor for people as charity. But such charity makes no sense. So it is not helping somebody, spiritually. So we have to also see what act is being performed and in what mode. So if alcohol is being given for charity, then it is better the person doesn't give charity at all, because it's causing destruction to somebody's health. So Gajendra performed a devotional service of just plucking a lotus flower and offering it to the Supreme Lord, and the Supreme Lord was sold out to Gajendra. The Supreme Lord was, in such a hurry to come and rescue Gajendra. So it could be menial services that we perform, by devotional services that we perform, but the mood in which we perform matters a lot. And we can also see in the example of Hanumanji as to how Hanuman had the capability of utilizing everything in this service of the Supreme Lord. So we get it from our acharyas, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who is our Prabhupada's spiritual master, how he had trained the devotees of ISKCON to perform Yukta Vairagya, that is, to utilize everything that we possess for the Supreme, in the service of the Supreme Lord. So anything material can be converted into spiritual just by offering it to the lotus feet of the Lord. And this we can see as to how anything and everything that individual possesses, it can be utilized in the service of the Supreme Lord. So for this, we can see Hanuman, as to how Hanuman, he had gone to get back Mother Sita to Lanka, and when he was, he was not offered a seat, Hanuman made his tail as a seat and he sat upon it when Ravana insulted him. And we can also see how Hanuman got anger, and he utilized that anger in the service of the Supreme Lord. So it is said that, Hanuman's tail was set on fire. He was being made fun of when he was at Lanka, and Ravana's servants set the tail of Hanuman on fire, and how Hanuman got angry because of it, but he utilized this anger in the service of the Lord. So when this Hanuman's tail was set on fire, he burned the entire Lanka. So the Vaishnavas tell that, it was the fuel of Ravana. It was the palace of Ravana, and the thing that got burnt was Lanka, but Hanuman utilized his anger in the service of the Supreme Lord. So we can see as to how everything of Ravana was destroyed just by, the anger of Hanuman. But Hanuman utilized it, and he got Mother Sita back from Lanka, and he performed devotional service to the Supreme Lord. So we don't have to complain that, we don't have proper facilities for serving the Supreme Lord or performing our devotional service. But we can see as to how the devotees, we have such examples of such exalted devotees who utilized everything in the service of the Supreme Lord. So the first aspect is that that only devotional service can help us transcend the three modes of material nature, and the mood that we perform in devotion, the devotional service is important, and how everything that an individual possesses can be utilized for the service of the Supreme Lord. And moving on, the Lord we can also see various examples as to how there is no material qualification for performing bhakti the seva. So there is no in the scriptures, it is nowhere mentioned that you should have a bungalow or you should have a car, you should have this amount of balance in your bank account to perform this service to the Lord. So in the scriptures, we can see as to how material qualification isn't it doesn't matter. It is not a consideration for performing devotional service. So for this, there is example of Kollavishi Sridhar and Sudhama from the scriptures as to how Kollavichi Sridhar, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to come, he was a banana seller. And when every day, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to come to him and he used to bargain so much with Kollavichi Sridhar, and Sridhar would tell the Supreme Lord as to how he has got these bananas for such a low cost and he is making no profit in selling them. But over and again, Supreme Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to tell that, why are you making so much profit, Sridhar? You shouldn't be doing this because you're the devotee of the Lord. Lord used to pull his leg, and later, after such a long time bargain, Mahaprabhu used to take the bananas for free. So, and we also could see as to how Guru Maharaj was telling that Sridhar used to put, 50% of whatever little income he earned, 50% of it would go to the service of Mother Ganges. And once Mahaprabhu also asked as to, because, Sridhar was in such a condition that he used to wear dhotis which had holes in it. And in spite of that, he used to give 50% of his income to the service of Mother Ganges. So the Supreme Lord asked him Sridhar, why are you, spending it on this, giving it to the service of Ganges? Why don't you buy clothes for yourself? Because he was in that condition wherein, he used to wear such torn clothes and come. And Mahaprabhu was so pleased by Sridhar because, every day Mahaprabhu used to come to Sridhar and bargain for him for the bananas. And that loving exchange used to happen between Sridhar and Mahaprabhu. So once Mahaprabhu was so happy with Sridhar and he asks Kollavichi Sridhar, you ask me anything you want, any material opulence that you want, I am ready to, grant you that. Then Sridhar, he tells Mahaprabhu, I desire that birth after birth, that I become Sridhar and you come as the Supreme Lord and you bargain with me for these bananas, and I always want to have this loving devotional service, loving exchange with you. So Sridhar had nothing. He literally possessed nothing. Even the clothes that he wore was torn, in fact. But Sridhar had that love for the Supreme Lord, and Supreme Lord was ready to give anything, and even granted Sridhar the love of Godhead. Prema Bhakti. The same in case of Sudhama, as to how, Sudhama, he got only chipped rice for the Supreme Lord. Supreme Lord, when, Duryodhana had prepared such wonderful feast, he rejected that. But when Sudhama, he got only some chipped rice, that too he begged that chipped rice. Sudhama didn't even possess that chipped rice. He had gone for Madhukari to different places and he got the chipped rice and he offered to the Supreme Lord. When it is said that when Krishna was eating the morsels of so he was eating the chip rice that Sudhama offered. So the queens of Krishna, they were scared because, you know, the moment Krishna puts the third mouth of the chipped rice, Krishna would, you know, give everything to Sudama. So that was his. That is how merciful the Supreme Lord is. So Sudama literally possessed nothing. In spite of that, he had only taken chipped rice to the Supreme Lord, and Supreme Lord granted him everything. He turned a hut that he had into a golden palace. So we can see as to how material qualification is is not a consideration for performing the devotional service. And in Bhagavad Gita, finally the Lord tells that the devotional service you perform, that the devotee performs unto me, is never lost. So the verse in reference to this is Neha Bhikramanastosthi Pratyavayur Navidyate Swalpamapi Yasya Dharmasya Trayate Mahato Bhayat. So we can see in the example of Ajamila, even though he had performed devotional service, but due to the influence of three modes of material nature and by the will of the Supreme Lord, he came in contact with the prostitute. But you know, the devotees of the Lord were so merciful, they advised him to name his son as Narayana. And at the time of his death, he called out to his son Narayana, but the Supreme Lord thought, you know, he's doing Nama Japa, he's doing Sankirtan of my name, and I should go and rescue him. And Supreme Lord rescued him. So Ajamila shows us that whatever devotional service you perform, you know, it'll be there, it is never lost. And it is not like these material things, you know, that you study, you get a degree, and in the next life you have to, you know, start again from the beginning. But in Ajamila's case, whatever devotional service he had performed, it was never lost. So devotional service is never lost, and we are losing nothing by doing devotional service. In fact, you know, the Lord tells anybody who performs devotional service unto me, I preserve what they have and I give them what they lack. So that is how, you know, Supreme Lord is being controlled by devotional service. And the last point is, you know, we've learned that the Supreme Lord even reveals that you have to perform devotional service unto me. But in order to know how do we perform devotional service, we need a spiritual master, you need a mentor, you need a Shiksha Guru to perform these, to help us to understand how do we perform these devotional service. So in regard to this, there is a very small pastime from Mahabharata as to when it is the time when the Kauravas have lost, the Kurus have lost their battle in the Kurukshetra, and the Pandavas are victorious, and they're coming back to Hastinapur. And you know how Dhritarashtra is in all grief because he's lost his sons. And he's on the way, he and Gandhari are on the way to Kurukshetra to see, you know, the dead son, to see their faces for the last time. So they're on the way, and it happens that you know, they Pandavas and the Dhritarashtras, they meet, and they have conversation, and Dhritarashtra goes to see their dead son, and he comes back, and all the scene is being set up. And now, you know, the Dhritarashtra is under the care of Pandavas, because he's now there's no son, he doesn't have a putra to take care of him, so he's under the care of Pandavas. And that is when Vidura comes into picture. So Vidura comes, and you know, he tells Dhritarashtra as to how he has to, you know, it is the time for him to retire, and retire from his family duties and perform devotional service, at least at that point of time. So the senior Vaishnavas, they give example of a surgeon. So suppose if a person is having a brain tumor, the surgeon, how he, you know, starts cutting this layers of the skin one by one, and then finally at the end stage, he, you know, aims at the tumor that's inside the brain, and he cuts the tumor out and stitches back the wound again. So similarly, at this point of time, when Dhritarashtra is in a situation where he's lost all his sons and he's under the shelter of Pandavas, Vidura comes in and he starts explaining one by one. Slowly, he starts, injecting that the concept of devotional service in the mind of Dhritarashtra. So, as to how the doctor takes out one, each layer of skin. Similarly, Vidura is, injecting one by one philosophic into Dhritarashtra, and finally he tells Dhritarashtra that you're leading a life of a dog. You're eating you're eating remnants of Bhima and surviving. Even at this situation, if you're not realizing that it is time for you to retire and perform devotional service, you have performed such abominable activities. You've in that love for your son, that moha that you had for your son, you had performed such activities, and you have hurt the devotees of the Lord. It is the time for you to retire. And when Dhritarashtra starts telling all this, when Vidura starts telling all this to Dhritarashtra, Dhritarashtra gets enlightened and he immediately leaves the palace. He leaves Hastinapur and he goes. He goes to forest to perform meditation, and as to how he quits his body. So the point to understand here is so Lord had sent Vidura to make Dhritarashtra understand that, at least at this point of time, he has to perform some devotional service. So similarly, the Lord sends spiritual masters to the living entities, so that we can take shelter of the spiritual master and get connected to the Supreme Lord. So this Supreme Lord, either he himself descends or he sends his representatives. In case of Dhritarashtra, he sent Vidura, who is his representative, who is his pure devotee. He sent him. So similarly, in our case, he has sent the spiritual master to us. So we are all so fortunate that our Guru Maharaj is in Bangalore, and the entire Bangalore city has been purified just by the presence of Guru Maharaj in the city. So it is right now, it is up to us as to how we approach the spiritual master, render service, menial service unto the spiritual master, and surrender unto the lotus feet of the Supreme Master, of the spiritual master, and re-establish our lost connection, because the Supreme Lord tells it is only the spiritual master who has seen the absolute truth, and only he can give it to the other people, because he himself has seen the supreme truth. So since Guru Maharaj is here, we all can take this opportunity of rendering service at his lotus feet and surrender unto the lotus feet of the spiritual master, because it is impossible to perform devotional service or surrender to Krishna without the guidance of spiritual master. So I stop here by. So I thank Madhurapati Prabhu and Parabhakti Mataji for giving me this opportunity for my personal purification. If I've committed any mistake, I request you to please correct me. Thank you. Hare Krishna.